You've always been so unambitious, Scarlett, my dad declared, his words slicing through the dinner table conversation. Not everyone is suited for the major leagues, and that's perfectly acceptable. Just leave the serious business to individuals like your brother. I gently placed my fork on the plate, my hands trembling beneath the table. And yet, Dad, aside from yourself, my supposedly unambitious self seems to be the only other person at this table with a proven track record of success, I stated calmly, locking eyes with him. My brother Benjamin smirked, flashing the same infuriatingly condescending grin I'd endured my entire life. My name is Scarlett Greer. I'm 32 years old now, but when this all started, I was just the disregarded middle child in a family obsessed with outward appearances and status. My father, Richard Greer, had constructed one of Chicago's most prosperous real estate empires. Benjamin, my older brother, was his golden boy, the heir apparent despite his often careless approach. My younger sister Olivia was the pampered darling, more concerned with social media and brunch dates than anything remotely resembling responsibility. And then there was me. Quiet, reliable, and, according to my family, easily forgotten. The rest of the dinner unfolded in a hazy blend of conversation that excluded me. Benjamin bragged about a recent property deal he'd supposedly finalized, although I'd overheard whispers at the last company event that it was plagued with problems. My dad beamed at him, posing strategic questions to keep his son in the spotlight. Olivia interjected occasionally, peppering the conversation with stories of her latest social engagements. Meanwhile, I sat silently, pushing food around my plate, questioning why I continued to put myself through these excruciating dinners. In my younger years, I'd strived to keep up, to earn their approval. I graduated near the top of my class and pursued every internship imaginable, believing that with enough hard work, they would finally acknowledge my capabilities. However, regardless of my accomplishments, it was never sufficient. "You're too reserved," my dad would often say. "You lack the aggressive edge necessary for this business." It didn't matter that I consistently outperformed my colleagues or that I had innovative ideas for the company's advancement. They had already formed their opinions about me. The turning point, a moment unnoticed by my family, arrived a few years ago during one of the company's weekly strategy meetings. These meetings were largely symbolic, with my dad and Benjamin making all the decisions while the rest of us passively observed. On that particular day, I had a proposal. A meticulously detailed plan to transform a struggling property into a lucrative residential complex. I'd dedicated weeks to research, financial projections, and crafting a pitch I believed even my dad couldn't dismiss. When my turn to speak finally came, I barely managed 2 sentences before Benjamin interrupted. "That location is a lost cause," he declared dismissively. "We've already invested too much. Let's move on." "I've actually identified a solution," I began, but my dad cut me off with a wave of his hand. "If Benjamin says it's not worthwhile, then it's not worthwhile." Next item. I recall sitting there, my face burning, my meticulously prepared plan discarded as they moved on as if I were invisible. That evening, I made a crucial decision. If they refused to listen to me within their company, I would build my own. I didn't resign from the family business outright. That would have attracted unwanted attention. Instead, I started small, pursuing my own projects discreetly in the background. A dilapidated duplex on the city's outskirts became my initial investment. It was all I could manage with my meager savings, but I recognized the potential that everyone else overlooked. I devoted weekends to painting, replacing fixtures, and immersing myself in the intricacies of property management. When I sold it a year later, the profit was modest, but it was mine. And that was just the beginning. Over the next several years, I sought out undervalued properties throughout Chicago, eventually partnering with Sophia Tran, a shrewd real estate investor I met through a mutual acquaintance. Sophia possessed everything I required in a business partner: intelligence, experience, and an equal desire to prove the doubters wrong. Together, we built something remarkable, one property at a time. By 30, my portfolio was flourishing. What began as a side project had evolved into a legitimate business encompassing residential complexes, boutique office spaces, and even a few prime retail locations. Sophia and I operated everything under a company name my family wouldn't recognize: TR and Partners. I wasn't merely accumulating wealth, I was establishing a reputation. Quietly, steadily, I had become one of my father's most formidable competitors. The irony was delicious. My family remained completely oblivious. While they were preoccupied with managing their sprawling, inefficient empire, I was acquiring properties they had dismissed as unprofitable and transforming them into successes. Each successful deal felt like a personal triumph, a small step towards proving to myself that I was more than the insignificant figure they perceived me to be. One evening, as I reviewed financial reports, Sophia entered, carrying 2 coffees. "You've been working non-stop," she commented, placing a cup in front of me. "Take a break, Scarlett. Even machines require downtime." I smiled, taking a sip. I can't resist. Every time I see the positive trajectory of these numbers, I'm already thinking about the next move. "There's this office building near the Loop I've been eyeing." Sophia raised a skeptical eyebrow as she settled into the chair opposite me. "Let me guess," she began. "It's undervalued, overlooked by every major player, but you've already devised a plan to transform it into a gold mine?" "Pretty much," I admitted with a grin. "It's precisely the kind of property my dad and Benjamin would scoff at, which makes it ideal." Sophia leaned forward, resting her elbows on the desk. "Speaking of them," she said, "don't you think it's just a matter of time before they uncover who's behind TR and Partners?" "Perhaps," I replied with a shrug. "But by the time they do, it won't matter. We're not merely surviving, we're flourishing. And besides," I hesitated, swirling the coffee in my mug, "a part of me doesn't even care if they discover the truth anymore. They've spent my entire life dismissing me. I've learned to live without their validation." Sophia tilted her head, studying me intently. "You're not doing this for their approval, Scarlett. You're doing it for yourself. And if they ever do figure it out, well, let's just say I wouldn't mind witnessing their reactions." I chuckled, the weight of her words resonating within me. "You're right," I affirmed. "I'm doing this for myself. Whether they discover the truth or not is irrelevant. It doesn't diminish the fact that we've built something extraordinary." Sophia raised her coffee cup in a mock toast. "To building something extraordinary," she declared. I clinked my cup against hers, a renewed sense of purpose surging through me. To building something extraordinary. At every family gathering, my dad and Benjamin never failed to remind me of my supposed inadequacy. "Scarlett," my dad would sneer, shaking his head as if my very presence offended him. "When was the last time you even set foot in the office? You know, for someone who holds shares in the company, you certainly excel at making yourself invisible." Benjamin, always eager to contribute to my humiliation, would chuckle and add, "Not that anyone would notice, naturally. It's not as though the company is missing your invaluable contributions." They believed they were being witty, mocking me for taking a step back, completely unaware of the true reason for my distance. I had ceased frequenting the office the moment I began collaborating with Sophia. Initially, it was out of necessity to dedicate my time to our projects. Later, it became a matter of self-preservation. Every visit served as a painful reminder that in their eyes, I was an afterthought, someone not worthy of inclusion or serious consideration. I attended only when absolutely mandatory, fulfilling my shareholder obligations and escaping as quickly as possible. To them, my absence merely reinforced my irrelevance. To me, it was an opportunity to construct something far more significant than they could ever fathom. From the outset, Sophia had been the public face of TR and Partners. It was a strategic decision we made jointly. She handled public appearances, media interviews, and high-profile negotiations. I preferred to operate behind the scenes, concentrating on the strategy, analytics, and decision-making that fueled our success. It wasn't that I was concealing myself. I simply understood my strengths, and Sophia's confidence and charisma were unparalleled when interacting with others. It was a perfect synergy. To the outside world, TR and Partners was Sophia's creation, a rapidly expanding real estate firm helmed by a sharp, ambitious woman with an exceptional talent for identifying undervalued properties. Investors admired her, competitors envied her, and the press couldn't get enough of her story. No one knew about the woman behind the curtain, the strategist orchestrating every move with meticulous precision. Only a select few trusted partners were aware of my role as the architect behind the scenes. This anonymity was deliberate. It afforded me the freedom to operate without scrutiny, particularly from my family. My name wasn't listed on the website, my photo wasn't included in annual reports, and no one in the industry connected me to TR and Partners. Even if someone investigated our operations, they wouldn't find any trace of my involvement. To everyone outside our inner circle, Scarlett Greer was nothing more than a shareholder in her family's real estate empire, a name on paper with no active participation in either company. And that's precisely how I intended it. Not even my father or Benjamin suspected my connection to TR and Partners. To them, it was merely another small competitor encroaching on their market share. They never considered looking closer, never imagined that the company steadily outperforming them in certain sectors was led by someone they deemed inconsequential. The irony wasn't just satisfying, it was my most potent advantage. But I knew this delicate balance couldn't last indefinitely. The more we expanded, the more attention we would attract. One day, whether I was prepared or not, my two worlds would inevitably collide. The industry gala was the type of event my dad and Benjamin relished. It was all about networking, mingling with the elite of the real estate world, and reminding everyone why Greer Enterprises was considered a powerhouse. I hadn't planned on attending, it wasn't my preferred environment, but Sophia insisted. "Come on, Scarlett," she said, tossing an elegant black dress onto my couch. "You've earned a night of celebration. Besides," Sophia added, a playful glint in her eyes, "it'll be quite entertaining to observe everyone's reactions when they realize how far TR and Partners has come." I reluctantly agreed, knowing my presence would likely go unnoticed. My dad and Benjamin were certain to be there, but they had so thoroughly dismissed me that I would be just another face in the crowd, and I was perfectly content with that. At least, that's what I told myself. The ballroom was breathtaking, a display of opulence that screamed old money. Chandeliers glittered overhead, waiters navigated the throngs of people with trays of champagne, and the city's most influential figures congregated in small groups, exchanging polite laughter and business cards. The moment I spotted my dad and Benjamin, I knew the evening was about to become an exercise in patience. "Well, well," Benjamin said with a smirk as I approached their table. "Look who decided to grace us with her presence. You know, Scarlett, these events are typically for individuals who actually contribute to the industry." "Behave, Benjamin," my dad muttered, though his tone wasn't much kinder. He barely glanced at me as he adjusted his tie. "Just try not to embarrass us." I suppressed the retort that sprang to my lips and sought refuge at a table near the back, where Sophia and a few of our closest colleagues were waiting. My dad and brother couldn't see me from there. "How's it going over there?" Sophia whispered, nodding towards my family. "Exactly as anticipated," I replied. "Let's just get through this evening." As the night wore on, award after award was presented, and Greer Enterprises failed to secure a single one. My dad's expression darkened with each announcement, and Benjamin's usual bravado diminished. I could sense their mounting frustration but remained detached, content to observe from a distance. Then the pivotal moment arrived, and the final award of the evening, the host declared, goes to the firm that has demonstrated unparalleled innovation and excellence in the real estate sector. This year's winner is TR and Partners. My heart leaped as applause erupted throughout the room. Sophia rose from her seat, beaming as she made her way to the stage. My dad and Benjamin exchanged bewildered glances, clearly perplexed by how a smaller firm like TR and Partners had managed to eclipse them. Sophia accepted the award with grace, her poise and charisma captivating the audience. As she took the microphone, she began, her voice warm and steady. "Thank you. This recognition means the world to TR and Partners and to everyone who has contributed to our journey. When we founded this company, we had a vision to find value where others saw none, to innovate where others played it safe, and to build not just properties, but opportunities. And tonight, being here amongst so many talented individuals, this award feels like a validation of that vision." A ripple of polite and appreciative applause spread through the crowd, but Sophia wasn't finished. She adjusted the microphone and took a small step forward, her expression softening. "But," she continued, her voice taking on a deeper resonance, This moment isn't just about me, or even our team as a whole. It's about someone who has worked tirelessly behind the scenes, someone whose brilliance and determination have been the driving force behind TR and Partners. I'm standing here tonight because of her vision, her strategic mind, and her unwavering commitment to excellence. I froze, my stomach clenching. Sophia's eyes scanned the room before settling on me, a subtle, knowing smile playing on her lips. Many of you may not know her name, but that's because she prefers to remain out of the spotlight. But without her, TR and Partners wouldn't be the company it is today. The mastermind behind every deal we've closed, every risk we've taken, and every success we've earned is my partner and closest confidant, Scarlett Greer. The room fell silent, and then the murmurs began. Heads turned in my direction, whispers escalating as recognition spread like wildfire. My dad and Benjamin sat frozen at their table, their expressions a mixture of confusion, disbelief, and something I couldn't quite decipher, perhaps humiliation. My dad's jaw tightened, while Benjamin's smirk vanished. Sophia continued. Scarlett is the kind of leader who doesn't need to shout to be heard. She lets her work speak for itself. She's the one who sees possibilities where others see failure, who takes risks others are too afraid to take, and who fights for what she believes in, regardless of the doubters she faces. Her brilliance has not only transformed this company, but has set a new standard for real estate innovation. And I believe it's time the world knew it. Her words washed over me, each one dismantling the walls I had erected to shield myself from the years of doubt and dismissal. The murmurs in the room intensified, but so did the applause. My colleagues at the TR and Partners table were on their feet, clapping and cheering. Sophia turned to me, extending her hand. Scarlett, she said, come join me. This moment is yours as much as it is mine. For a moment, I was paralyzed. My heart pounded in my chest, and my legs felt like lead. Then, I saw Sophia's encouraging smile, the warmth in her eyes, and the applause began to register. Slowly, shakily, I stood, but my resolve solidified with each step I took towards the stage. As I ascended the stairs and stepped into the spotlight, I could feel every eye upon me. My father's, my brother's, and the room full of industry leaders who were completely unaware that I had been shaping their world from the shadows. I reached Sophia's side, and she handed me the award, her hand resting supportively on my shoulder as she leaned into the microphone one last time. This is Scarlett Greer, Sophia announced, her voice filled with pride. And if you haven't heard of her yet, trust me, you will. Standing there on stage, the weight of the award in my hands and thunderous applause echoing around me, I experienced something I hadn't felt in years, a sense of validation, not from the crowd, but from within myself. My eyes briefly scanned the room, landing on my father and Benjamin. Their stunned expressions were priceless, a mixture of shock, disbelief, and a flicker of something that resembled respect. Sophia leaned closer, her voice low and steady. Say something, she whispered, giving my shoulder a reassuring squeeze. I stepped up to the microphone, my heart pounding. I wasn't accustomed to public speaking, but this wasn't about grand pronouncements. It was about being seen. Taking a deep breath, I began. Thank you. This is unexpected, but deeply meaningful. When Sophia and I launched TR and Partners, we knew we were taking a chance. On properties others dismissed, on ideas others ignored, and on ourselves. Tonight is proof that those risks were worth taking. The audience applauded politely, but I wasn't finished. To everyone who believed in us, thank you. And to those who didn't. I paused, allowing myself a small smile. Thank you for underestimating us. It fueled our success. The ensuing laughter and applause invigorated me, but my focus remained elsewhere, on my father's expression, which had morphed from astonishment to something inscrutable, and on Benjamin, whose jaw was clenched so tightly I thought it might shatter. I stepped back from the microphone, Sophia beaming beside me as the applause subsided. As we returned to our table, she turned to me with a grin. Now that, she said, was a moment worth savoring. We could feel the ripple of whispers following us, the weight of the room's attention still palpable. Sophia leaned over, her voice low and amused. I'd pay good money to know what's going through your dad's head right now. I glanced towards their table. My father sat stiffly, his hands clasped on the table before him, staring straight ahead. Benjamin appeared ready to explode, his face flushed as he whispered something heatedly to my dad. Olivia, ever oblivious, sipped her wine, glancing between them as if trying to determine whether the tension warranted interrupting her evening. "They'll come around," Sophia said, as if reading my thoughts. "Maybe not tonight, maybe not ever in the way you deserve. But they'll have no choice but to acknowledge what you've accomplished." "Maybe," I replied, though I wasn't certain I cared anymore. For once, their acknowledgement wasn't the objective. It was a byproduct of proving to myself that I could thrive without their approval. As the event drew to a close, I could no longer avoid them. My dad approached our table, Benjamin trailing a few steps behind. Sophia, ever composed, rose as he arrived, extending her hand with a gracious smile. "Mr. Greer," she said warmly, "it's an honor to meet you." He shook her hand stiffly, his usual confidence noticeably absent. "Likewise," he replied, his voice strained. His eyes flicked to me, a mixture of pride and discomfort flickering within them. "Scarlett, we need to talk." Benjamin scoffed, crossing his arms. "Talk? What's there to discuss? You've clearly been busy undermining the family business behind our backs." Sophia's smile remained fixed, but her tone sharpened just enough to send a chill through the air. "Undermining? I'd say Scarlett has been doing what you should have been doing, innovating and succeeding. But I suppose we can leave that discussion for another time." Benjamin's face flushed a deeper shade of red, but my dad held up a hand to silence him. "Enough," he said sharply. He turned back to me. "Scarlett, can we step outside for a moment? Just the two of us?" I followed my dad onto the terrace, the cool night air a welcome reprieve from the intensity of the ballroom. The city lights stretched out before us, glittering against the dark sky. He stood silently for a moment, his hands resting on the railing, his shoulders unusually tense. Finally, he spoke. "I didn't know," he said quietly, his voice heavy with something I couldn't quite place. Perhaps regret. "I had no idea you were capable of all this." I crossed my arms, leaning against the railing beside him. "That's because you never bothered to find out," I replied, my tone even but firm. "You and Benjamin were so preoccupied with dismissing me that you didn't take the time to see what I was doing. You wrote me off without a second thought." He sighed, his gaze fixed on the skyline. "I thought I was protecting you." "Protecting me from what?" I asked, unable to conceal the frustration in my voice. "From proving you wrong? From demonstrating that I could achieve more than you ever gave me credit for?" He turned to face me, his expression earnest for the first time in years. "From failing," he admitted. "This business? It's brutal, Scarlett. I didn't think you had the—" He hesitated. "The what?" I interrupted. "The guts? The intelligence? The drive? What exactly did you think I lacked?" His silence was telling, and for a moment I felt the sting of old wounds reopening. But then he shook his head. "I was wrong," he said simply. "I see that now. Tonight made it impossible to deny." A couple of days later, my dad requested a meeting at my office. He arrived precisely on time, wearing his usual impeccably tailored suit and carrying a briefcase that somehow made him appear even more imposing. Sophia was already waiting in the conference room, poised and unflappable as always. I joined them, feeling a mixture of curiosity and a sense of inevitability about whatever he was about to propose. He wasted no time getting to the point. "Scarlett, Sophia," he began, opening his briefcase and sliding a folder across the table. "I've spoken with the board, and we're prepared to make an offer to acquire TR and Partners. We believe your expertise and vision would be an invaluable asset to Greer Enterprises." Sophia raised an eyebrow, her expression neutral as she glanced at me before responding. "That's a generous offer, Mr. Greer," she said diplomatically. "But I believe Scarlett should have the first word on this matter." My dad looked at me expectantly, his confidence barely masking the underlying uncertainty. I didn't even need to open the folder to know my answer. I leaned back in my chair, meeting his gaze directly. "No," I said simply. His brows furrowed, clearly not anticipating such an immediate and decisive rejection. "Scarlett, at least consider—" "No," I interrupted, my voice calm but firm. "I've worked too hard to build something that's mine. I'm not going to relinquish that to return to a company where I spent years being overlooked and underestimated. I'm free now, Dad, and I intend to stay that way." The ensuing silence was heavy, but I didn't regret my words. Sophia smiled faintly, a silent gesture of support, while my dad sat back, looking as though he wasn't quite sure how to react. For once, he couldn't argue. He couldn't deny my success, and he couldn't buy my respect. Finally, he nodded, closing the folder and rising to his feet. "I underestimated you, Scarlett," he admitted, his voice softer than I'd ever heard it. "I won't make that mistake again." As he left the room, I felt an enormous weight lift from my shoulders. I didn't need his validation anymore. I had forged my own path, achieved my own success, and I was finally free to pursue it without looking back. Hey there. Did you enjoy the story? If you did, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It helps us tremendously and ensures you won't miss out on the other captivating stories we share here. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.